Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our culinary medicine webinar series. My name is Jessica VanRoo, and I'm the executive chef at the UCI Susan Samueli Integrative Health Institute. Before we start, I want to review a few Zoom housekeeping items. We are recording the session. After the session, we will post this webinar on our website along with the recipes to download. Everyone will remain mute to limit distractions during the presentation. After the presentations, we will moderate a Q&A session from the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. Please take advantage of the Q&A feature to address questions to our panelists. The Samueli Institute Culinary Health Webinar Series is a workshop based on the UCI School of Medicine Culinary Medicine curriculum. Each class is led by a UCI Health SSIHI provider and includes a demonstration from me based on a relevant daily meal plan. Our previously recorded classes, presentations, and recipes are available. For more information, please visit sssihi.uci.edu. Today, we have the pleasure of hearing from Dr. Ryan McNally. Dr. McNally holds 2 medical licenses in the state of California as a naturopathic doctor and a physician assistant. Additionally, he is a faculty member for the Academy of Integrative Health and Medicine Fellowship Program. He has served in multiple private practice medical directorship roles in private practice and is the former chief medical officer at Bastyr University, California, where he remains as volunteer faculty. He has held positions with the United Nations World Food Program and the Yale Griffin Prevention Research Center. He is a published author in a peer-reviewed medical journal and is sought after content expert, educator, and speaker at conferences, podcasts, and health and wellness publications. His clinical medical practice focuses on integrative medicine with a special interest in longevity, health span, and age-related diseases. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Ryan McNally.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me today. Thank you, Jessica, for that very nice introduction. So let me go ahead and bring up my slideshow here, and we'll get going. Okay, so here we have it. All right, so I will be discussing today a slideshow on longevity and health span. This is kind of a basic introduction to the topic. And the special focus, of course, since this is a culinary workshop, is on dietary aspects of health span and longevity. This is one of my favorite topics. It is applicable to everybody. And the science and the evidence pool that we've been accumulating with the folks who are doing basic science over the past 10 years has been it's been a remarkable move forward in the science. And so we'll touch upon that, a little bit of that today. And we'll also make it applicable and fun. There'll be some interesting statistics and information shared. Standard disclaimer, nothing should be construed as direct medical advice. Always seek a medical provider to be able to personally guide you to your specific scenario, conditions, etc. All right, you already heard about my bio, so my current roles. So I am one of the many medical providers at the Susan Samueli Integrative Health Institute. I directly oversee the PGY1, the first year naturopathic residents, as well as I'm part of I'm assistant director, the integrative education programs in the Institute as well. I do some consulting and some medical practice outside of the institution in addition. Okay, we went through the bio, current roles. Oh, and my disclosure, this is a bit of a tongue-in-cheek disclosure here. So I'm living and I don't want to die, and therefore I'm conflicted and I have a vested interest in all endeavors that may lead to a longer health span. Oh, I have my PowerPoint is not moving forward here. Give me a second. There we go. All right, the objectives. So basically, we're going to go over and understand health span and lifespan in terms of the terminology. That's going to be able to allow for all the discussion components today. Some of that, of course, lifespan you're going to understand. Health span might be a little bit of a newer terminology. We'll explain what that is. Aging, we're going to talk about that as a major risk factor for all chronic health and disease and how nutrition and plays in there. We're going to talk about trends that we've seen in terms of average lifespan and centenarian rate, which is people living to 100 or older. And we're going to talk about the pillars of aging, which is basically all the scientific information that's been put together to understand what is happening throughout the aging process. Why do we have a decline and then eventually death? And then we're going to identify some lifestyle interventions that may lead to a greater health span and lifespan. And of course, the focus is on nutrition. All right. So lifespan, let's talk about the one that you guys already, wants to jump forward for some reason. The definition that you guys already should know. So lifespan is you're born, right? You live a certain number of years and then you die. And whatever number of years you live to, if you make it to 90, for example, your lifespan would be 90. So how does that relate to health span, right? So how we define health span is fairly similar. So you're born, you age for a number of years, and then you die. But the difference is that little bit of time between where health declines significantly and then the actual death. So, for example, if you live to 90, that is your lifespan. But if at the age of, say, 85, your health significantly declined, then we would say that your health span was 85 years, but your lifespan was 90 years. And of course, what we really want to do with all of our medical interventions and all of our prevention and lifestyle advice is to really get the health span and lifespan to be very close together. We want people to be extremely healthy all the way through their entire health span, or as much of it as possible, because without the quality of life, of course, the number of years isn't quite as important. All right, so that has to do with dispelling some myths. So one of the critiques of this is, if we live for a long time, who cares if we are just increasing the number of years of without necessarily the quality of life? But the reality is, every time through different methodologies that we've tried to increase the number of years in our animal models that we study, we always increase the health span as well. So what we see is, when we intervene and something improves lifespan, it also improves health span. It seems to push chronic disease further out. So they move together. So that does dispel, the science is dispelling that myth that we're just going to increase the number of years that are unhealthy. All right, so let's look at aging as a major risk factor for death and disease, right? So if we see we see here that heart disease as of 2020, and this is pretty consistent over the years. Sometimes cancer is number one, sometimes it's heart disease, but pretty consistently lately it's been heart disease. And so what we see in terms of all of the conditions listed here as the most common ones: heart disease, cancer, maybe less so COVID-19, but there is an aspect of COVID-19 that works as well. Stroke, chronic respiratory diseases, Alzheimer's, and diabetes, all of those tend to happen in aged populations, right? These are not generally happening in young people, right? Obviously, a young person can have heart disease. They can be born with heart disease, congenital. Someone can get cancer in the younger period of life, but the numbers are far higher in the older populations. And so very clearly, we see that aging is your risk factor across the board. Even COVID-19, right? The most vulnerable population for COVID-19, which of course is an infectious disease, is age, right? That is the one aspect that COVID-19 seemed to have had the biggest impact on that population overall. Unintentional injuries doesn't quite fit there, although there are generally more injuries in the elder years as well as the very young years. All right, so it's important to understand what our potential is based on that. My slideshow keeps wanting to run away from me here. So what is our human potential, right? So this is for things that we have recorded. The oldest human being on record, right, is Jean Calmet lived an astounding 122 years and 164 days. So she is the longest living person. She was a woman living in France, and she has since passed. So we know that at least is our top that we have on record, right? And then here you have the top 10. So you can see basically the range goes from 117 to 122. And you will notice that all of these top 10 longest living human beings are women. So women definitely, for me and the men out there, do tend to outlive the men. And this is all of our top 10 have passed. There was Kane Tanaka, the number 2, actually passed last year, and then Lucille Randon also passed very recently as well. So we had number 2 and number 4 just recently pass over the past year. And interestingly, both of those folks survived COVID-19 even at this extreme age of 119 and 118. Pretty amazing. Okay, so then we have men. So Mr. Kaimura at 116 years and 64 days was the longest living man. It was a Japanese resident. He has since passed. And the oldest current living man is Juan Vincent Perez Mora, 113 years, 294 days, and he's a Venezuelan man. The current longest living women are Maria Brañas, 116 years, 13 days. She's a Spanish woman, and Fusa Tatsumi, 115 years, 326 days, and she's a Japanese woman. Okay, so now that's what we have. That's what we have documented from the longest living human being. So we kind of know what our current upper threshold is. And of course, our hope is that we're able to institute more and more positive health habits and interventions and prevention to be able to allow people to live much longer on average. So the current U.S. life expectancy as of this graph, okay, was about 75.1 years for men, which is represented by the blue line, and about 80.5 years for the women. Okay, now that has since dipped because of COVID. So the average lifespan is now below 70 when you combine both men and women. There has been a dip in this over time, but really this is here just to demonstrate that the U.S. life expectancy at birth on average has changed significantly over the years. If you look at 1911, the average man lived to 50 years old. And of course, there were folks that lived to 90 or 100 at that time, but on average, they weren't living that long, and women were only at 53. And you can see through the progression through the years. So certainly there's a lot of different things that can influence this, but the most important takeaway point from this graph is that this is not a static thing, right? The upper thresholds continuously change due to better hygiene, better health, access, vaccines, medications, and just medical care overall. Okay, and how about the centenarian rate? This is the number of people who are living past 100. And so this is worldwide. So this is broader than just United States, but you can see over the years, the number of people living over the age of 100,000, over the age of 100 is gone up to 573,000 people as of 2020. So this number just keeps climbing, and you can see how steeply this number has climbed over the past 5 or so years. Okay, how does that compare to animals, right? So this is also useful information to compare human beings to other animals on our planet. So here's the top 12 that I could find. And you can see, we're gonna start at number 12. We have African elephants living up to 89. We have the macaw living up to 92, the long-finned eel living up to 106, the Nile crocodile living up to 121 years, very close to the humans, of course, at 122 years, the Galapagos giant tortoise at 152 years, the red sea urchin and bowhead whale, 200 years, koi fish, 226 years, the Greenland shark, an astounding 400 years, the ocean quahog, an astounding 506 years, and the most remarkable overall is the immortal jellyfish. And this is not a joke. This is real. There is actually an organism that's about the size of your fingernail that is called the immortal jellyfish, and it is biologically immortal, meaning that it can live keep living essentially, and it can go between an adult form and a youthful form and a juvenile form. It can kind of transform back and forth. So if it feels threatened or starts to grow old, it can turn back into a juvenile form and kind of repeat its cycle over and over and over again. They can die. If you were to kind of squish it in your hand, you could kill it. But interestingly enough, biologically speaking, they can live presumably forever, which is almost seems like science fiction, but this is documented. Okay, so what have we learned over the years? I'm going to need to speed along because we're getting close to the nutritional component, and then I want to be able to spend at least a good 5 minutes, talking about that end. So on the molecular level, again, scientists are categorizing what is actually happening with the aging process, right? Because if you don't know what's happening with the aging process, how do you find ways to treat it, whether it be lifestyle or supplements or medications or procedures, right? And so this is basically the attempt of the researchers to identify what is actually changing throughout the aging process. I'll just mention one. They're all important, but I'll mention one just because this is prominent in the news and a lot of articles, is stem cell exhaustion, right? Stem cells are the cells in our body that are able to create brand new cells, right? And if we exhaust these cells, if we have no ability to rebuild our liver and rebuild our heart and rebuild our brain and all the other aspects of our body, then eventually we'll accumulate cell death and damaged cells, and that'll be the spot in the system that causes our decline. So that's one of the important pieces. All right. And this is just the illness wellness continuum. So when you're young, you're here in the blue section, and as you age, you will kind of gradually start to move throughout these ages and into the red section, where we eventually have death. And so this is just a way of looking at that continuum of health and the end result, death, and of course doing everything we can to keep us in this green and blue end. All right, so let's go into nutrition. So in 2022, there was a brand new study that came out. For the first time, we were able to put nutrition into a longevity calculator, meaning that we could actually calculate the impact of our food choices on our predicted lifespan. Okay, and so we're going to go through that in 1 second. But before we do that, I want to show you this slide here, because this just gives us an example. We're going to be talking about foods in terms of grams, right? And most people don't, they don't know what 50 grams of a food are. So this gives us a little bit of context. So a quarter cup of brown rice, for example, that'd be 50 grams. Is a picture right there. Quarter cup of beans, 50 grams there. 3 ounces of food is 100 grams of chicken or turkey or salmon or beef, and that's going to be 100 grams or 3 ounces, and there's a picture there. And of course our eggs, so about 1 medium egg is about 50 grams. And again, this is just for context in the calculator here, so we'll take a look at what that means here. And just so the punchline on the calculator is, we think we can modify the human lifespan by up to about 10 years in women and about 13 years in men, if we really pay attention and are diligent about these food choices. All right, so I'm going to stop share so that I can switch over to the calculator. All right, let me find that calculator. Here's the calculator. Here it is here. You should be seeing that momentarily. Okay, very good. So you should be able to see my calculator now, and the link to this calculator is in the slideshow. So feel free to access it and play around with it. So this calculator it's not the most user-friendly calculator in the world, so maybe future versions will kind of accommodate for that, but let me give you kind of the basics here. So you have the ability at the top of this calculator to put your age in, right? So you can change your age, and then you can of course change your gender to kind of fit and personalize it for you. So let's just pick somebody who's middle-aged. We'll pick somebody who is 50 years old, and we will pick a female. And let's take a look down here. So we haven't actually modified anything. All we did is personalize it so far. So right here, if you are 50 years old, you are female, your expected longevity based on the standard American diet would be 84 years. So it'd be an additional 34 years if you have made it to the age of 50. Okay. And so now what we can do from that information, okay, is we can modify something, right? We can say, okay, what if at the age of 50, I gave up beef? Okay, we could go down here. We could So this is on the left-hand side is the standard American diet, right? And this is the one that you're going to modify, right? If you're going to make your change on the one on the right, right? So I'm going to change this one down to 0, okay? And if you scroll back up here, you will now see the expected number of years has gone from 84 over here to 85.4. So you have gained 1.4 years. Okay. So that's basically at a very, very basic level how this calculator works. Okay. And so beef is one of the ones that if we cut it out completely, we only see gains. So small levels of beef, larger levels of beef, sort of moderate levels of beef, all of those result in a reduced lifespan for human beings. Okay. So unfortunately for the beef lovers out there, there really isn't any healthy amount of beef that allows you to live longer. All amounts seem to have a negative impact on the body. And that's pretty consistent with the nutritional epidemiology over the past 20 or 30 years. Nothing's really new there, despite the fact that there's probably a million books that'll promote it. The same thing is true for all these other aspects here. You can add in nuts, for example, because the American Standard Diet doesn't actually have any servings of nuts in it, believe it or not. You can add in, let's say, 50 grams of nuts, and now you have gone up to 86.6 along with that change for the beef that you've reduced, and you've gained now 2.6 years, which is pretty amazing just by adding in 50 grams of your nuts into your daily routine. Okay, and so if you want to compare what you're currently doing, you would just change this over here, because not everybody is eating the standard American diet. So if you don't eat fish, you would change this over here to 0, right? That's kind of, this is the left-hand side is designed to be what you are doing. So it's programmed at the standard American diet, but you can now change it to your diet, whatever you're currently doing, and you can get an output on what that is. And then compare it to, okay, if I change something on the right-hand side, how would that compare? Okay. And so if you wanted to just go ahead and optimize your the diet, so what do I need to do, right, to live as long as possible based on dietary changes, you can just click optimal up here. And what that'll do is it'll make the right-hand column, it'll make it in the optimal amounts. And now you can see standard American 100 grams, optimize up to 200 grams. Whole grains 50 grams, optimize up to 225 grams, and et cetera, all the way down. You can see the changes. Beans, for example, standard American diet's pretty low, and then optimize 200 grams. Milk and dairy, optimized down. So there's actually a little bit of overconsumption of milk and dairy in most diets. And so when you pull that down to 200 grams, that's where we tend to do better. Okay. So that's basically how this calculator works. And again, you can really play around with it, but just keep those core things that you change: your age, your gender. You can clip the optimal button there to make the right-hand column optimized. And then on the left-hand side, is really designed to be what you're doing. But if you don't change anything, it's just going to program in the standard American diet. Okay. And then you can make your changes, and then it always reflects up here. How much have you gained over here at the top here? And then the original versus the changes are recorded there. Okay. So that's what we see from the calculator. Okay, I'm going to go back here and I'm going to summarize it in my slides. I'm going to share my PowerPoint again. I have one more summary slide, and then my time is up. It goes by very quickly. All right, so here is my summary slide. Okay, so I just categorize it into winners, the middle, and the losers. So the take-home message from this is the winners are beans or legumes, nuts, fish, whole grains, veggies, and fruits, right? This should not be surprising. This is pretty consistent information over the past 20 or 30 years, and this longevity calculator just only confirms the exact same thing. And the middle is eggs and refined carbohydrates. So at a level of 0 for eggs and refined carbohydrates, it's actually not beneficial to human health. But having a little bit of these are beneficial for human health. If you have too much, either eggs or refined carbohydrates, it becomes a negative impact on human health. And the clear losers are processed meats, beef, and sugar sweetened beverages. There's no healthy amount. They all lead to less years and a higher likelihood of chronic disease. Okay, so that was really quick, but I'm going to end the presentation there. That way we have information. We have enough time for Jessica to go through her amazing demonstration today, which are based on healthy principles from longevity nutrition.
Jessica, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now? Yes? Yay. Oh, so you didn't hear me earlier. Doctor, that was funny because I was saying that I actually have, my grandmother is 102 next month. And so I have family members that seem to live over 100. And she does eat a very, very healthy diet, and she's perfectly fine at 102. She can walk. She doesn't really have any ailments other than a little bit of arthritis. It's amazing to watch her through these years too, and just exciting. So we're going to show two dishes. We're going to do a salmon, and then we're also going to be making a black bean brownie. And the black bean brownie I've shown a few times, but we're adding different things into it to make it a little bit healthier. So I'm going to start with the salmon though. Sockeye salmon. I know you can buy a whole bunch of different salmon. I know I tell you all the time different types to buy, Costco being your best friend. But there is, I mean, when we talk about salmon, sockeye is probably going to be your best one just because it's, first of all, not farmed, it's fresh or it's wild. And it's not going to have the additives that the other salmon might have. But what I want you to notice about sockeye salmon compared to other, yikes, is that it is significantly thinner, okay? Look at this guy, it's thin compared to like that salmon that might be that more almost yellowy orange as opposed to this pure orange. What that means is keep the skin on. The skin will prevent it from being overcooked because it's just another barrier. If you want, I usually keep the skin on and I don't serve the skin, is I'll remove it from underneath. To show you what you're going to do with your salmon, you can buy this Sprouts, Costco, that you. First thing you want to do is you want to feel for pin bones, and there will be some right here. And you can take them out if you want, but some of them are so small that they'll just finish cooking. And what you can do is you can take a pair of tweezers and just pull them out. And you can just go down the line and do that. Be careful, don't use a knife, because if you use a knife, what will end up happening is you're just going to take off salmon, and that's not what you want to do. So I'm going to portion this into 4 pieces. 1, 2, 3. And it's got the belly part. So this is the belly part. It's good still. It's nice. Tuck it so that it's even in size and so that it's that size. You want to cook it, salmon, 10 minutes per inch. So if you look at that, that's not even an inch. So this will take about 5 to 8 in a 400-degree oven, and that's all. Let's make a topping for it. I'm going to use oil, and then I have a little bit of Dijon mustard. And then you can use a sweetener of whatever kind. I'm using date syrup. You can use honey. I just have a lot of date syrup in here now, and so that's what we're going to use. We're going to mix that up, and this will be our glue. So this is the glue that's going to glue everything else on top. There we go. Crust is going to be made with cashew, oats, and pumpkin. All stuff that's going to make it crunchy, but none of it is actually bread. So if you think about that, it's really cool. And you don't have to use cashews. You can use whatever nut you have. So that's all going to go inside. And pumpkin seeds, try to get the ones that are roasted without salt. Handful of pumpkin seeds and everything. I add them into my roasted nuts now even. All right. Perfect. And then you've got this really pretty kind of green, happy St. Patrick's Day to all those people. I'm glad that this is green because then I'm going to get away and nobody can pinch me now. And if you don't want to use all of it, you don't have to. You can even use this to coat chicken. Think of it as just a breading of some sort. So I'm going to take some of this mustard mixture and oil mixture, put it right on top. Again, it's just acting like glue. So if you don't use all of it, don't worry about it. And if you wanted to do this as a whole piece, you can. It just takes a little bit longer to cook. So say I'm doing this at home. I want to make sure that I don't have too many dishes and I don't want to make the rice that I'm going to make with this. What could I do? How can I make this a meal without it being a mess? Put your salmon to one side and put some veggies right here and roast it together. So you could roast cauliflower with it, zucchini, mushrooms even. So now all I'm going to do is just pat on some of this and you're good to go. And the reason why I'm putting it on as opposed to dipping it in, I can save this then. If I were to take this and push it in here, I'm going to contaminate it and I'm not going to be able to use it again. So if you know how much you need, then you can go ahead and do it. But most of the time we don't. And I don't want to waste any of this because it's so good you can use it on other things too. And there you go. So again, this goes into a 400-degree oven. We're going to do about 5 to 8 minutes. Again, about 10 minutes per inch in a 400-degree oven. And that's it. So I'm going to put that in the oven. Okay. While we are waiting for that to cook, we're going to make cauliflower fried rice. And I'm sure some of you have seen cauliflower fried rice, but I'm going to actually show you how you can make it on your own. So make sure you can use a clean food processor if you want. You don't have to use a dirty one like I did. I have orange cauliflower today. So you can buy different colors. There's the purple, there's the orange, there's white. And all of those colors are a different chemical that's going into it to make it healthy for you. Not that there's anything wrong with white cauliflower. White is healthy too. It's just fun to play around with all these colors, especially if we have them. So when you want to rice cauliflower, what you want to do is you want to cut the broccoli into manageable sizes. You can even cut this smaller. And you can just break it up with your hands even. Okay? I'm not cooking it ahead of time though. And I'm going to just put enough to cover the bottom layer. I'm not going to overfill it because what I want to do is pulse it. So I'm going to put the lid on, or you don't have to, if you're comfortable, let it go a little bit. Stop. And what will happen is you will sometimes be left with one big chunk, and I don't want you to overdo it. So take that big chunk out and pour this out and then continue, because I don't want pureed cauliflower. I want cauliflower rice. I'm going to put it back in and you can go back, or you can buy it already made. Give you a price difference though. A head of cauliflower will probably cost you $2.50, maybe $3 at most. Frozen riced cauliflower can sometimes be about $4 and you're getting half the amount. So make it yourself. And I'll be honest, what they're giving you is more of the stem. They're giving you more stem than actual cauliflower to save money. There you go. I'm gonna take that out. And think of all the colors you can do then. You can do the purple and a little bit of the orange and the white too. All right, last bit. When you have less in there, you can actually keep it on. Just don't overdo it. There we go. Perfect. So there's that. And for our cauliflower fried rice, I'm going to add a little bit of fresh herbs, quite a lot actually, half a cup. You can use parsley. You can use baby spinach too if you really wanted to. I have cilantro. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a haircut. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab it all by the stem. Don't throw the stems away. They're great for broth and soup. Like pho, use the stems. Save the stems for pho. because that's where most of the flavor actually lives. Or green curry. Pinch your blade, hold the stems, and then at an angle, shave the leaves off of the stems, just like that. So you might be left with some big stems, perfectly okay. You can go back in and chop it, or I'm okay with it. So I'll just everything up and then give it a good chop.
Yes, I have a question. I'm
Go for
curious what your thoughts are on the palatability, the different taste of frozen versus fresh cauliflower.
Ooh, that's a good one. When you buy it frozen, it's almost like it's removed some of the flavor because of the water, I think.
Mm.
And I hate giving frozen vegetables a bad rap. I think what happens when things freeze is it breaks down the cell structure. So when you break down the cell structure, I feel like it loses some of its flavor too because of how small it is. I almost buy like whole cauliflower, rice that, and you might get better flavor.
Fantastic. Would you say the same thing for your herbs and spices? Because they of course they sell them in little frozen blocks as well. I'm curious what your thoughts are on that.
Oh, the frozen blocks of the herbs and spices are fine. Just make sure that they don't have any more additives in there. I feel like so much of our frozen food or convenience foods have so many additives in there that you just want to make sure. So either make it on your own or just realize that if you are using that, you're going to probably need to add more. So if you want to add, like, if you want something to taste like cilantro, you're going to probably need to use double the amount.
Awesome. Thank you.
And you can freeze your own too, if you want. So I am going to start here now. And so we want about half a cup. We won't need all of that. Just a portion of that is all we need. And we're going to use a little bit of avocado oil. And we're going to heat up the pan. Or I'm going to try. Because as we all know, Jess is not very comfortable with an electric stove yet. I'm getting better about it. It's a lot of fun. It definitely gets hot really, really quickly. So you want to get your pan nice and hot. And then, because last month when I did this, I might have preheated it a little bit too much. So advice on getting good oil spreaders, users, whatever, to get oil into a pan. Plastic water bottles, or like the plastic bottles are actually the best. Like from the Dollar Tree or from Home Depot, they spray oil better than glass bottles do, just because the glass bottles, it holds on to the the oil, and it prevents it from squirting out. I know we don't like using plastic, and so that might be the reason you might not want to use it. But if you are looking for a product, it seems to be that the plastic spray bottles work better than the glass. Okay, we are getting there. And all we're going to do is add a little bit of garlic to start the flavor. And again, if you like the flavor of garlic, don't let it brown. Just let it kind of mix around. And I had my garlic chopped up ahead of time because remember, garlic has allicin. Dr. McNally, do you do any work on allicin, or do you talk about allicin at all in garlic?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the important plant chemicals, very, very potent chemicals that exist within garlic. So it is used medicinally in some scenarios.
What can you say about cauliflower then?
Ooh, that is a tougher question. I'm not sure I can go quite as deep on cauliflower.
Great vegetable, though. It's another one that we can add in our diet. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
We do have an interesting question in from the audience for you, Jess. It says, my experience with sockeye salmon is that the smell and taste is very strong. Is this normal?
Yes, it is. So a lot of people talk about fish being too fishy. And so there's a couple of things you can do. You can soak it. So if you know Japanese culture, they love fish. Their salmon, though, if you've ever noticed, Japanese don't actually do just pure salmon. Japanese don't actually do just pure salmon. They always marinate it. And part of the reason why they marinate it, and so I grew up in Taiwan, and my grandmother and grandfather were like Japanese lovers. They spoke Japanese. They were from Taiwan, but they spoke Japanese. My grandmother could not eat salmon for the life of her. She just thought it was the most disgusting thing because it was fishy. So if you look at Japanese cultures, what they actually do is they will soak it, marinate it in different things. One of them being sake. So sake seems to, like wine, pull out that flavor, that fishiness. Miso is also a great one to use. The other one, those are Asian cultures. Western cultures, like European cultures, they'll soak fish in milk. And the milk seems to also draw out some of that fishiness. And so both of those are good options. Salmon isn't the only fish that you should be eating or could be. There's better ones out there. And the better ones are the small ones. The ones in the cans, sardines, anchovies are not way better, but are better than sometimes salmon because of how small they are. The smash fish.
And unfortunately, they get such a bad rap.
They do.
People think, a lot of times think they don't taste good, but I'll be honest, my kids oftentimes think they're eating tuna fish, and it's actually just a mashed sardine or something, and it's prepared the exact same way, and they don't know the difference.
They don't. They really don't. And the other part about sardines and anchovies that are so great is that you eat the bone. Mm-hmm. And that bone has that calcium, like all the extra nutrients that you normally don't get from fish because you're only eating the meat part of it. Like the skin. Oh my goodness. Like if you're okay eating the salmon skin, that's good stuff right there. Air fry it. Don't deep fry it. And then crumble it on top of a salad. So the salmon is done. And then with the cauliflower, all I'm doing is I'm sauteing it with a little bit of that oil and the garlic. And as I'm doing that, if you've ever noticed, I do not salt until the very, very end. Okay. Because I feel like we get enough salt in our diet already. There really is no need for all that sodium. And if you can start cooking by adding just salt at the end, you'll end up with less. The other thing salt will do is it'll draw out moisture. And so whether or not you want that extra moisture when you're cooking, debatable. So sometimes I like adding it at the very end so that it doesn't release too much in the beginning.
Jess, I have two questions for you. One is from the audience, and then one is a follow-up question from me. Cool. One of the questions is, what is in terms of like the cooking and the culinary aspect, maybe the taste aspect, what's the difference between the gray meat and the pink meat aspect of the salmon? And then the other question is, where should people be buying their anchovies?
So the gray meat, or like that part that you're talking about, mm-hmm. Like I have at least 2 kids who love salmon, so they'll eat it all the time, except for my one son who will look for the bloodline. So it's a bloodline. So that's where the blood is. And so it doesn't taste any different. If you see it, some people will want to remove it. You can remove it before you cook it. So you can V it out, take a knife, and you'll see it. It's like a line right through the middle, and you can just cut it out and then bake it, and then you won't see that kind of grayish color. Where do I buy anchovies and sardines? Sprouts usually. There's really good sustainable lines that they sell at Whole Foods. I know I don't talk about Whole Foods that much, but they do have some good sustainable seafood. And those would be the canned sardines and anchovies. So try to buy sustainable ones if you can afford it. And one great tip from Karen Lindsay, our registered dietitian, she makes the best salads. She probably is going to hate me for saying this, but what she does for lunch every day is really cool. What she does is she brings a salad and then a tin of anchovies or sardines, and it's in oil, the ones that are stored in oil. And then she has no dressing, and she takes the oil from the can of sardines or anchovies, pours it over her salad, and does a squeeze of lemon juice. And that's her lunch every day. It's amazing. It looks great. So there's that. And now I'm going to add just half of that cilantro in just to brighten it up. So again, if you want, you could use baby spinach. You can really add any kind of color to this that you wanted, or any kind of vegetable to make it your own.
I think
right.
we've piqued the interest on the anchovies and sardines. So the next question is, do they only come in cans, or can you buy them fresh?
You can buy them fresh. They're hard to find though. And I'll tell you where you actually find them. Where I have found them before fresh are actually the Vietnamese supermarkets in the frozen section. The problem with them though is there's really bad freezer burn on them most of the time because they've been in and out of freezers. And so you'll see them and they're individually. And so what ends up happening with freezer burned fish is it doesn't taste very good. Most of the time they'll use it for things like soup or broths. You might be able to also find some at Korean supermarkets. So Korean supermarkets will also have them fresh, and they're little ones like that. If you buy them fresh though, what happens is you'll look at it and you'll have absolutely no idea how to prepare it. When you buy them in the tins, they're canned in the tin. And so it's cooked in the tin. So it tastes better because it breaks down the bone for you. If you make your own sardines or you make your own anchovies, the best way is deep frying them or putting them in your air fryer. So you just want a very, very light coating, maybe a little bit of oil, and then pan fry them. But again, remember, there's bones in them, and you're not going to get the same effect as if you bought them in the tins, because in the tins, that pressurizing breaks down that bone a little bit more.
And Jess, how long did you end up cooking that cauliflower rice for?
This was in for 8 minutes. I would say about 5 minutes. 5 minutes was what it took about. And again, taste it. When you're making this, taste it to see. If you've got bigger chunks of cauliflower, it might take a little bit longer. All right, last dish that we're going to make, we are going to make a black bean brownie. A black bean pumpkin brownie. Food processor, our best friend. And so I just also wanted to show you a product difference. I myself have been using a lot of oat flour, but I've always made my own oat flour. Convenience. So then now they have made oat flour. But how much do oats cost? Almost nothing. And you can buy them organic. So make your own oat flour. If you want to have this around, of course you can, just so that it's convenient, but it's a great gluten-free alternative. So I've got oats in here and black beans. And stop buying canned black beans. Buy them, make them in your Instant Pot. You can actually cook black beans in a day. They do not need to be soaked. That's a misconception. Maple syrup, date syrup, if you want. Pumpkin. Oh, not pumpkin pie filling, but pumpkin puree, okay? Make sure it's pumpkin puree. Vanilla. Coffee, instant coffee. Now, why do we add instant coffee? It's kind of like cinnamon. It tricks our mind into thinking we're having something chocolatey. Cinnamon makes us think we have something sweet. So it'll have that effect. Cocoa powder, not dark cocoa powder though, not that Dutch process stuff. The Dutch process tastes bitter if you're not using it correctly. And so this is just regular cocoa powder. Now you can use cacao. People will ask about using cacao. The problem is you're cooking this, and so you might lose most of the benefits that you would get from raw cacao if you were putting it in here. And then some coconut oil or butter, whichever one you want to use. And now I don't know where I put the lid. Oh, that's a problem. Oh, I think it's in there. And then we're gonna finish it off with a little bit of walnuts and chocolate chips. Yeah. I'm just going high.
Jess, we had a follow-up question on the salmon about
Sorry, hold on.
Oh, sorry.
Say it again.
A follow-up question about the salmon. What is the white material that comes out of the baked salmon?
Ooh, that's the protein. So that's like if you've ever cooked chicken, for example, on the stove, and when you're cooking the chicken, it kind of turns white before it actually browns. It's pulling out that and boiling it as opposed to cooking it. So it's actually, so that's what happens when you put something straight into the oven. It'll pool a little bit more because you're not going into direct heat. You're slowly cooking it. So it'll drip out a little bit more. There's nothing wrong with it though. All right. And so now I've got the black bean brownie, and I forgot to add the baking soda. Sorry, but you can add that in at the end. That's fine. Or blend it. And then I'm going to add my walnuts, chocolate chips. If you want, you can add the chocolate chips. Up to you. Makes it just a little bit better. And then you can double this recipe and you can make a large pan. I'll show you. I've already made it, so I'll show you. I'm going to put this in a small pan to bake, like a loaf pan. And these are really good for breakfast even. And your kids will not know the difference. Don't ever tell them that there's black beans in here. All right, so then that'll go in the oven. And then when it comes out, I made brownie bites earlier. So I made them into bite-sized pieces. You want to use silicone, though, silicone. And they'll just pop up just like that. They're really nice and moist. Can you see maybe? And they'll break up just like that. And if you look, you can't see, it looks exactly like a brownie inside. It's really, really, really good. You have any more questions? Let me see, look around. No.
I have a question from the audience here. It says, you mentioned using Dutch cocoa, not to use Dutch cocoa because it would be bitter if not used properly. Can you briefly explain what you mean by using it properly?
Yes, that's a good question. You need acid. Whenever you use Dutch processed cocoa, you need to add an acid of some kind. And so it's kind of like baking soda and baking powder in the way that they react. Baking soda, if you're only using baking soda, you usually need something to help like activate it liquid wise. And so baking powder uses liquid and heat. So it's the idea of combining these things together that will help enhance its flavor. Dutch cocoa has alkaline in it, it's alkalines. And so what ends up happening is if you don't add an acid, it tastes bitter. It's just one of those things. And then it's easy to dry out things too. If you use too much of it, it dries things out to the point now where you might not even find that much Dutch processed cocoa. It's now being called dark chocolate cocoa. And what it is, it's a half and half. They've reduced the amount, I find that they've reduced the amount of Dutch cocoa and then they mixed it with regular cocoa. So you can try that. And oh, you don't have to use black beans, try red beans. What I find amazing is that we talk about eating legumes and pulses and beans and things like that. And I, coming from an Asian country, never ate it in any other form than sweet, whether it be red bean soup, green bean soup, red bean paste. All of them were desserts for us. And so if you want to introduce beans into an Asian diet, start with where you know, in something sweet, obviously reducing the sugar by a lot, but you know you do eat it, and then start playing around with it a little bit more. It's just like Westerners might be more comfortable with eating beans in savory dishes. This is a great way for them to eat them in a sweet way, but we're all so in tune with what we think we know and what we think we like. Switch it up a bit. You might realize that you actually like being sweet as opposed to savory. Oh, I see that. Oh, I actually can see. Do you have a good one? Do you have a good sugar substitute that you like to tell people about?
I mean, I like the sugar alcohols in general. Stevia is fine, but stevia sometimes will give a bit of a bitter flavor in my experience. So I find that cooking with it or baking with it is a little challenging, but then again, I am not a chef.
Okay, so I'm going to give you the big one that I just learned about. And I'm like, I bought a 15-pound bag recently to test with, and it's allulose. and you can buy it on Amazon. It's not cheap, but what I've learned is it actually can caramelize too. So I can put it on something, yeah, and I can caramelize it like regular sugar. So if you're interested in this, this is a new thing that I've been trying. Find a recipe online for a dessert that you like. First thing you do is you reduce the sugar by a third, okay? I'm telling you, most recipes out there for desserts, you can reduce the sugar by a third and you'll be okay. Next, take that amount of sugar, do half allulose and half regular sugar, and see if you can taste the difference. Everything that I've tried so far has been really successful. The only issue with allulose is that it's expensive. So it's not as cheap as some of the other sugars out there. So we're always talking about sugar in here.
I think it's fantastic. It's great advice. I've converted a lot of our household products to non-sugar based products. I've even kind of, to a degree, eliminated some of the natural sugars, because while they are natural and they have some good healthy properties to them because of that aspect, they still have the same negative properties from just a blood sugar standpoint. So unfortunately, honeys still have, it's still an added sugar, even, in natural maple syrup, still an added sugar. So it's still if you're adding that to something in your diet, it's still going to have overall negative health consequences, although it tastes delicious.
No, allulose does not have sugar alcohols, no sugar alcohols. And so, okay, so I'm going to end with this because I can tell Dr. McNally has kids too. We really do need to do something about the way that we eat, because I feel like if we ourselves can eat better, we can teach the future about how to eat better. I just read a really scary article that Lunchables just got a contract with the US Health Department to provide lunches for schools. So Lunchables, the people who make Lunchables. And it's scary because my kids don't get Lunchables, but they see kids at school who do, and they wonder, why am I not allowed to have that? And I could go through the laundry list, but we all have the ability to teach other people how to eat better. And one of the things we really need to start doing is looking at labels, not for anything like calories or counting calories, which are important maybe, but for the things that are in our food that really shouldn't be there, like the dyes and preservatives. Yeah.
Yes. I have had the kids look at the Lunchables as well, and we say, no, we can do better than that.
Yes. The one that got me the most was Twinkies. Everybody's heard me say this week. Twinkies have beef fat in it. Well, not every single Twinkie, but in the labeling, they have hydrogenated oils. And in the hydrogenated oil section, they have a parentheses, and they have about 4 or 5 of them. The last one being beef fat, meaning that they can use any of those based on what is cheaper on the market at the time. So if you're a vegetarian thinking that you were eating Twinkies and they were vegetarian, good luck. Yeah, because they weren't. Thank you.
Oops, I think we lost the audio, Jess.
Oh,
There we go. You're back.
Hear?
Yep, you're
okay,
back.
Good. We have Teresa, our health coach, next. And so please join us again. And thank you again, Dr. McNally.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.